Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Appropriations Subcommittee for Public Safety. I'm Alex Atwood. I'm the chairman, and welcome to all, particularly our good friend Justice Harold Melton and Justice Keith Blackwell. Welcome, sirs. As well as our Court of Appeals, Judge Ray, and Chief Judge Herbert Phipps, as well as our presiding judge, Sarah Dole. Thank you. Superior Court Judge Stolley and Goslin and Weaver. Thank you for being here, as well as our friends with the Prosecuting Attorney's Council, Chuck Spahas and Danny Porter. Thank you for your hard work, Danny. I know you well. And as well as David Miller, our district attorney from Lowndes County, and our public defender standards counsel, Dominique Rogers and Terry Rawford. Thank you very much for being here. Our first order of business, and I want to be sure we're working off the right LC number, is the substitute, Chairman Powell, House Bill 279, LC 29639-3S. Is that correct? Okay, and I will call you to testify to the bill, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To give you a little bit of background, I served as chair of the Public Safety Appropriations Subcommittee for the last 4 years, and during that time have met with the judges of various courts in the state. And we've talked about their needs and their budgets, and over the course of the years, we talked about judicial pay raises. And during that time, we have gone through one of the worst recessions, if not the worst recession of my lifetime, and certainly we have had limited resources in this state. And I have encouraged the judicial branch not to request a pay raise during that period of time, because we were all trying to survive. And, quite frankly, they were team players and actually took furlough days that the Constitution would have prevented us from levying against them, but they wanted to be participants in the process of making sure that the state budget was whole and that we functioned and provided the necessary means. And we talked about possible pay raises, and I told them that this year that I would be happy to sponsor a bill regarding a pay raise for the judges in the various courts if they would, wait till we got out of the recession to do that, and they graciously agreed to do that. And we talked about various numbers, and I told them that because they did control their own budget, that they needed to put some numbers in there so that we would have the resources that we would need if we had legislative approval to give a pay raise. And they did that as well. And we talked about various numbers, and they did studies, and I think that they can probably address those issues with you regarding what lawyers make in this state and what it takes to attract good qualified judges from private practice or from public service onto the bench. And we also talked about some of the things that other states are doing and what surrounding states are paying. And quite frankly, making sure that we had a line of demarcation between the various courts to recognize the amount of responsibility that the various judges in the various courts had. And so as a result of that, we came up with some tentative numbers. I started then talking to some of my colleagues in the House and talked to some of the leadership in the House. And what we eventually came up with is the proposal that you see in front of you. And it is based on, to some extent, what the judges had given me information on during the course of our conversations. It was also based on the fact that in 2008 that there was a pay raise that was overwhelmingly approved by both houses of the General Assembly, but only to be vetoed by the governor. And so it was my opinion that certainly if we address this as a pay raise that had already been approved in 2008, and that we were now just bringing back after the recession was over, that certainly it would have a better reception in the House and in the Senate. And so that was the underlying basis for doing the bill that you see in front of you. It's not exactly like 2008, because it's basically a $12,000 pay raise in each one of the categories in which it covers, which is the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, the Superior Court judges, the district attorneys, and the public defenders. And so I took what their salary was as of current and added $12,000 to it to come up with this pay raise bill. And so that is the bill that you have in front of you, and I would be happy to answer any questions, but that's the background and how we arrived at that number.
Excuse me, and forgive me, I'm not used to using this particular room, so I would ask your indulgence. Any questions for Chairman Powell? Representative Caldwell.
Chairman Powell, I, of course, as you know, have signed on to your bill, and I have been in the position that a lot of these people find themselves in now, but questions that I think need to be asked, of course, for the citizens of the state. And the first one that I have, if we raise the pay, particularly of Superior Courts, because my question doesn't go to the Supreme or Court of Appeals, aren't there a lot of county positions that are now tied to those by their acts, like state court judges, possibly solicitors, some magistrates in some counties, that we would cause counties to have to raise pay for people that they otherwise would not have had to pay for?
The short answer to your question is yes. There are a lot of pieces of local legislation out there that tie anything from juvenile court judges to state court judges, sometimes magistrate court. It just depends on the local legislation involved. I have a list that I had compiled by ACCG. They did a survey on it because I knew that there would probably be, number one, some questions about that, and number two, there would be some people that might want to make an adjustment because it's basically a percentage of the Superior Court judge's salary. And I mean, I looked at the ones that affect my county, and I think my state court judge is the only one that's impacted, and he's underpaid, so I would not even consider changing that local legislation, but I certainly have that information in the event that anybody would want to look at possibly adjusting whatever their local legislation says. But the answer to your question is yes, and it varies depending on the circuit and on the county.
And may I have just one follow-up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Also, Chairman Powell, and even if we raise this whatever amount, we're still not going to make the judges in the state equal with their pay, and certainly not even, there will still be a great many Superior Court judges that will still be making more than the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals.
I think that is an accurate statement, but it is as a result of local supplements, not by anything that the legislature has done. Right. And that is a determination by the locals as to what they think it takes to either attract a qualified jurist to the bench, or what their assessment of the cost of living in their particular circuit might be, but that is something that they have made on a local level, but I am aware that that is in fact the case. It varies anywhere from zero in some of the southern part of the state to $66,000 in other parts of the state.
Thank you. I don't have anything further, Chairman.
Any other questions for the author of the bill? I think we have some questions, and forgive me, Judge, I am not used to dealing with this. I'll be a little bit flexible here in how we do this, Judge. If any of you would like to testify to the bill, you're certainly open, and the chair will hear you. I think this is number 5, and I got you, Chairman Willard. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Do we have figures as to what the amount will be of the appropriation for the salary increases to the budget?
I think we do. And essentially what I understand, this is, if I'm reading the bill correctly, this is approximately $12,000 for each of the courts, Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, Superior Courts, as well as the district attorneys and the public defenders. Correct, Judge? No, per person. Gotcha. Chairman Willard, do you have any other questions, sir? Okay. Number 17, and, Chairman Powell. Could you speak into the mic just a little bit, Mr. Chairman? No, it's not. You are number 17, aren't you? Okay. There we go. I can hear you. I'm not sure if the audience can, but go ahead, sir. Perfect. Perfect. You've got a rookie chairman who's attempting to control a computer he's never controlled before.
I regret that I didn't get here quite in time, but I'm familiar with what my friend, you remember the power calls.
That's the only one. They're tied to Court of Appeals.
Representative Hightower. I think I've got you at desk 3, is that correct? There we go. It says it's on. I'm not quite sure what the issue is here. Chairman Powell, would you like to address that, or maybe we can bring that out in testimony?
I would address it if I knew the answer.
Okay.
Historically, Mr. Chairman, I was given the bill was passed creating the Public Defender's Council, and there was a big debate back then, and there was reached some type of compromise that said the public defenders would receive, I think it was 85% of what the district attorney, one each circuit of public defender, chief of public defenders, received 85% of that salary received by the district attorney for that circuit. So that's the way it was crafted as part of legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think a good way to proceed before we go back to the author of the bill, I would like to start off and give each member of the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, or the District Attorney's, Prosecuting Attorney's Council, Public Defenders, whoever, to have an opportunity to address this bill if they wish. Please bear with me. I'm used to using the other rooms. I haven't used this one before, but I'll do my best to make you be heard, allow you to be heard. And if you would, please come up to the podium. I think that would be the easiest. So I will start with the Supreme Court if you wish. And no pressure here, Judge. I'm just whoever you may wish to use.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Hugh Thompson, Chief Justice, Supreme Court. I would like to echo the sentiments Justice Melton mentioned a few minutes ago, and that is how much we thank you and thank Chairman Powell for drafting this bill, and how much we thank all in the legislature for the support financially of the courts of the state. I will say that I picked Justice Melton, Justice Blackwell to represent the Supreme Court in discussions and in study of this issue for several reasons. One, I know that for each of them, it's going to mean more to them. They've got more to gain, more to lose, because they're the youngest on our court. They also each have 3 children they've got to educate, and I don't want it said that trying to educate their children ran them off to some law school deanship or some law school professorship or some other job somewhere else and made a lot more money. I don't want them to leave. I want them to stay. And so I'm interested in keeping the very best that we can get on the court. I'm also interested, I know over the next 4 years that we're going to lose several people who are going to retire or hit that glass ceiling of age and have to retire. And so there are going to be opportunities for some governor or some electorate to put new people on our bench. And I want to be sure that when the opportunity presents, that we attract the very best candidates, the very best qualified people who can come and serve in the next generation of people on the Supreme Court of Georgia. Now, that's why I picked Justice Melton and Justice Blackwell. They're both very articulate, very smart, and I think will do the very best they can to persuade not only us, but also the legislature of the right direction, the right course to take in this matter. But underlying all of this, we do thank you very, very much for hearing us, and we appreciate all you can do for us, because it is not only to us, but all the other judges of the state, extremely important business that we're talking about.
Well, thank you. Your Honor, we do have an outstanding Supreme Court. Is there any questions for this particular witness? Representative Coomer, if you could, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. Just a very quick, straightforward question. The current salary for a Supreme Court Justice is $167,210. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Is my understanding, yes, sir.
Okay. And can you tell us whether Supreme Court Justices receive any other kind of ordinary state income, any other supplement in addition to that we could count as salary?
The only thing that is in addition to that is, Mr. Chairman, when the Willard a couple of years ago was able to secure passage of a bill that allowed judges on the Court of Appeals and justices on the Supreme Court that live more than 50 statute miles from our offices to bill the state mileage for one round trip home each week.
Okay. So
and I do that. I do that, and a couple people, I think I'm the only one on our court does it now, and there are a couple people on the Court of Appeals that do that, but that aside, that's the only remuneration that we receive from the state.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions for this witness? Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice.
Thank you very much, sir.
The chair would like to recognize now anyone from the Court of Appeals that would like to testify to the bill. And if you could please identify yourself for the listening audience, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir. My name is Billy Ray, and I'm a judge on the Court of Appeals. I've served in that capacity a little over 2 years, about 2.5 years, I suppose. And I want to echo what Justice Melton and the Chief Justice said about our thanks to the author. This is and can be a very thankless process to try to maneuver an effort like this through the legislature. I was a Superior Court judge for 11 years and was actually the point person for the Superior Courts back in 2008 when a bill was shepherded through over a 2-year period through the House and the Senate. Obviously we would have preferred if it would have not had a veto, but it did, and of course that has in some regards contributed to the need that I think judges across the state at all levels have, because that pay raise did not occur. Also, as I've thought back about this, to just try to think about how long it has been since there's been an adjustment to the pay of judges. I was a young legislator back in 1999 when the last bill passed. Had a lot more hair and was much younger at that point in time, and then have gone on, of course, and served for 11 years as a judge at the Superior Court level, and now 2.5 years on the Court of Appeals. So it's been a long time, and during that period of time, of course, a lot of things have happened through Governor Barnes and Governor Perdue. I mean, we've had some recessions. There were times where no one in the state government had any kind of adjustment at all. There were also other times where there were adjustments made, but not for elected officials. And so that fact also has contributed to where we are. I'll certainly be glad to answer any questions you have. We appreciate your consideration of this, and we certainly put the issue before you and recognize that it's your job to make these decisions, and we thank you for listening to us in that regard.
Thank you, Judge Ray. Representative Coomer.
Thank you, Judge.
Yes, sir.
Same question that I had for the Chief Justice. Is there anything in addition to your base salary, which I have as $166,186 per year, that would be considered salary or base, a supplement to that salary, or any other kind of income that the state provides other than the per diem identified by the Chief Justice?
Not that I know of, and I was listening real closely because if there was something, I was anxious to hear what it might be. But there is the supplement or the mileage. We have a judge who is from Waycross, who's pretty familiar to all of you, Valdosta and Waycross, and we have a judge from Chickamauga and a couple of others, that one from Soperton, one from Albany. Our chief judge of our court is from Albany, and they may get that supplement. The rest of our judges, I believe, are from the metro area as defined by the federal government and by state law. I traded a 3-mile commute for a 33-mile one-way commute when I took a job down here, so I'm not eligible for that. But I was listening. I wanted to know, so no, sir.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Judge Ray. Any questions for this witness? Okay. Thank you very much, Sean. Anyone from the Superior Court judges, Judge Stolley or Judge Weaver, Judge Gosselin? Judge Weaver, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Staley from the Superior Court of Cobb County. I'm also president of the Council of Superior Court Judges. In attendance are a number of our judges, and I'd like to recognize them as well. I have with us President-elect of our council, Judge Brenda Weaver. I have Judge Horace Johnson. He's our Secretary-Treasurer. Judge Kathy Gosselin is our legislative liaison and runs the legislative committee of the Council of Superior Court Judges. And Judge Bill Hamrick is here. I'd like to also stand in support of and great appreciation to Chairman Powell for authoring this bill. And I'd like to also extend our appreciation to the 41 members of this House that signed on to the bill, many of whom are in this room. And I can say that all of the Superior Court judges are in support of this bill and deeply appreciative of it.
And please forgive me, I mistakenly referred to you as Judge Weaver. I know Judge Weaver well. I've actually appeared in her courtroom, so please forgive me for that.
I consider that a compliment.
Any
In fact,
questions?
I wish I were that feisty.
Any questions? Any questions for this witness? Representative Coomer.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Judge, for being here today. It's been a kind of an interesting journey to try to figure out exactly what Superior Court judges make in this state.
True.
Of course, we do know there's a base salary of about $120,000, but all but one circuit in the state receives some supplement. As I've reached out to the council to try to figure out exactly what judges make across the state, even the council has admitted that they can't really tell me exactly what judges make in the state because not every Superior Court judge or every circuit will report all of its various sources of income back to the council. So, for example, I just did a little checking on one spreadsheet that I think this did come from the council, that shows that, for example, the Cobb Circuit has a base salary with supplement of $186,145. The Augusta Circuit has about $185,000 with supplement. And I'll come back to those in a minute. But what was most interesting to me, because of the information I could gather, was the Eastern Circuit, which is Savannah, Chatham County, shows a base salary with supplement of $178,721 as of June 2014, which is partially true. Mm-hmm. Because they do have a $66,084 annual supplement, but there's only one judge in the Superior Court down in Chatham County that makes that amount. That's the least paid judge at $186,336. Every other judge in the court has some additional supplement, a longevity supplement. The chief judge receives an additional supplement of $5,400. So just looking at Chatham Superior, Chatham Superior alone, the highest paid judge in that court makes over $200,000. So it doesn't help, I think, the members of this committee to try to figure out how we can, or maybe you can help me answer this question. How does this committee come to terms with trying to enhance salaries for Superior Court judges across the state, some of which are already making more than $30,000 more than the judges and justices of the higher courts? And at the same time, there's such disparity across the board. Wouldn't it make more sense to try to address, maybe in a tiered fashion, helping some of those lower paid Superior Court judges? And if a judge is already making $200,000, what's the argument that we should enhance that salary by giving an increase across the board?
Well, Judge Goslin has done a lot of research on this, but I would make one observation, and it would be with the school teachers. My sister is a retired principal, and every school teacher in the state has basically a base salary that y'all set. But then in order to attract and retain qualified teachers in their communities, I believe it's 60 to 70% of all teachers have supplements in their communities. And I think it's different, but it's similar in analysis, in the terms and nature of home rule and letting local communities, if they want to add additional compensation to a judicial officer, that they have that ability to do so. But I would like Judge Goslin to speak. She's done some research on this, hoping that perhaps we could clarify some of that.
Is it? Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I love taking on the easy questions, too. One of the things I did want to point out, Representative Coomer, is that, and I know you have this sheet, so you can see it, but we've looked at it a lot, and there are only 26 counties that actually pay a significant large supplement that would make those judges either equivalent to or their salary larger than the Supreme Court. The rest, and that's 26 counties out of 159, as you well know, so the rest of them pay less. And so the majority of the folks there, and I think we need to look at it as circuits and counties, make a lot less. And those judges have waited a long time for an increase. The fact that a particular county has chosen over the years to really step up the pay and take that on should not penalize everybody else. And I'm not sure it should penalize those judges either. They live in a different community, obviously.
Well, and I guess to that question, to that issue,
Yes, sir.
maybe you can address my question about the concept of some kind of tiered system or a system that has triggers that would allow for a supplement, allow for an increase in base salary for judges who are under a certain amount of money, or Superior Court judges who make a lower amount of money.
We have not ever looked at that as an option. When we talked about this with Representative Powell, there was not discussion. We did not feel that would float, shall I say, and that the judges were not in support of that.
The judges did not support that?
Did not. Well, there was no real, we didn't really discuss it.
Okay.
So the discussion was always that everybody would get a raise, because the vast majority of our judges in those vast majority of those counties and those circuits don't make that kind of money.
Right.
The median circuit makes $25,000 supplement in the Mountain Circuit. So that's half of the circuits are above that and half of the circuits are below that.
Okay.
So that is a much smaller supplement.
Do you, I don't think it really matters what the council wants, I mean, when the rubber meets the road.
Right.
But
Right.
I am interested in knowing what the council would say about a tiered system, something that does account for those judges who aren't getting local supplements, but who we do want to continue to attract the best qualified candidates.
We do.
I don't think you have that problem. That's not a serious argument when you're in Chatham County and the chief judge makes $200,000. That's not, attracting qualified candidates is not an issue there. But it may be if you're in the Southwestern Circuit and you're only making $125,000. Of course, I don't know what the cost of living is there.
No, and he's 1 out of 211, so I don't know the answer to that either.
So how do we make sure that we keep attracting the best qualified candidates without creating a system that frankly looks grossly inequitable at the top and grossly inequitable at the bottom?
Well, and maybe we need to discuss that for all the positions. I know Judge Staley talked about that with teachers, but I know that the same is true for district attorneys. They have supplements. There are supplements all over.
Well, the DAs haven't asked for a pay raise. I mean, I know there's some in the bill here, but they didn't come this year asking for a pay raise. So that's why we're kind of laser focused on.
But I think we would have to
Superior
look
Court's
at how it all works. I mean, we would want it to be, we would want the system to work for everybody in the same way. So everybody that has a supplement needs to address the issue. So we would have to talk about it.
Thank you, Judge.
Including the district attorneys. So, thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for this witness before she leaves? Thank you, Your Honor. We appreciate what you do. We really do.
From me too.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you. Ladies.
Mr. Spahas or anyone from the Prosecuting Attorneys Council, I don't know if you wish to address the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have with me Danny Porter, the DA in Gwinnett, and of course David Miller, who's been the chair of the budget for the DAs for some time. If I could at least have the elected district attorneys in the room back there, please stand up to show you that we are here in support of this bill. I'd like to thank the chairman for bringing this issue forward. As you've heard us in just the last week or so, we were in here advocating for one of our #1 priorities, which of course are the assistant DAs, investigators, and administrative assistants in our payroll. That being said, the next priority was, of course, pay of the district attorney and maintaining the concept of parity or lack of not additional disparity between the pay of the DAs and the judges. So we appreciate being a part of that. We would field any questions or
Well, Mr. Spahas, first off, thank you, gentlemen and lady. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you deeply for what you do. I've worked with district attorneys and United States attorneys for much longer than I care to remember. I enjoyed the relationship. I just don't enjoy the years that have gone by. It's well over 40. But I've always admired you, and I've always admired what you do. You protect us, and I appreciate it deeply. Any questions by the committee? Representative Coomer.
Sure, why not?
I'd hate you to miss the opportunity.
Seems to be on a roll today.
Right. Well, and I've just been handed by Chairman Powell his telephone actually that shows the DA supplements, and a quick look. I noticed there are several more circuits where there is no district attorney supplement, but there also are circuits where district attorneys are supplemented up to $78,000 in one county, $52,000 in another county. So there, again, you have this broad disparity between DAs at the top and DAs at the bottom. Has there been any discussion with your group about trying to address what may be a shortfall on the bottom end without creating, again, that gross inequity at the top?
Well, if I could, the document that you've got is a document that we've accumulated and been verified by each of the 49 district attorneys. And what it basically shows is the average DA supplement in this state is $20,222,000. When you take the metro area out of the mix, that means the average supplement outside of the metro area is closer to $13,000. So there is a big disparity. That's not uncommon. We see that in the way the counties support the district attorneys. We have, for instance, and I wanted to point out, there's 8 district attorneys that do not receive any supplement. We have district attorneys' offices in this state, and Mr. Porter's a great one to address this, that are fortunate enough to have a good many county resources, including additional prosecutors, investigators, and other resources to prosecute their cases. So we do see that as a disparity. I do point out when discussing the concept of the supplement that Most of those supplements are not in any kind of retirement system. There's certainly none of them are in the judicial retirement system. So one of the things to consider about that is that pay will not move forward in the concept of retirement. So
Well, in some counties it does.
some it does, some it
In
doesn't.
my circuit, it does.
Right. But none of them are in the same retirement as the base salary. So, but yes, there's clearly a disparity, and then also you'll see that a good many of our DAs receive a smaller amount of supplement than the judges do.
So, again, back to my question, has there been any discussion with PAC, or are you familiar with any kind of interest in helping to create I'm using the word tiered, but that may not be the best term, but a tiered salary structure for, rather than a one-size-fits-all across the whole state?
Yes, sir. We would be more than willing to participate in a conversation of that nature. I mean, I answer the question one way is, you know, the district attorney's responsibilities are just as significant when they're a newly appointed or elected district attorney as they are one that's done it for 20 years. That being said, certainly it is in our benefit in this state to create the reason for a district attorney to stay in office, and we would very much be willing to participate in a conversation to look at what a system like that would look like.
Thank you.
Representative Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a difference between the pay for public defenders and the pay for district attorney. Can you just speak to the rationale for the difference in pay for public defenders versus the district attorney's office?
I can at least start with this premise, Mr. Representative Weldon. One of the best things that can happen for a properly run criminal justice system is to have adequate attorneys on both sides. I've been involved in situations where that was not true, and so we do support the concepts of there being an adequately paid public defender and a public defender system. I mean, I can stand here and talk to you about some responsibilities that the elected district attorney have that the appointed public defender don't have, but that being said, we're very supportive of adequately paid public defenders in this state. As far as comparing the types of cases and the numbers of cases, I can't give you the specifics, but I can talk about the fact that the district attorney is responsible for a lot more cases than those that actually make it to court. The investigation of those cases, the dealing with the grand jury, that process, the other statutory responsibilities of the district attorney that exist are in fact different than, and the public defenders don't have to deal with a lot of those issues. That being said, the amount of cases generally is well over half that a public defender does in any given circuit that the district attorney does. But keep in mind the district attorney prosecutes both the cases that are represented by the public defender and that are represented by private counsel. So in a nutshell, that's what I can tell you. I don't have actual numbers. And if I could let David Miller step up. Yes, sir. I think that's different. I think that's different from circuit to circuit. I don't. Go ahead.
It varies fairly significantly from circuit to circuit.
The chair sees some head shaking in the negative.
Additionally, I'd like to follow up. We're talking about comparing cases that are made. I'd just like to give another example of the cases that are never made. And for instance, unsolved homicides take up a tremendous amount of our time, both in the investigation and dealing with the victims in the case. Just by example, on our first furlough day several years ago, all of us who were furloughed spent that hot summer day cutting down bushes and clearing a path in Valdosta to a pond so that a submersible from the Wakulla County Sheriff's Office in Florida could come and put that submersible into the pond to look for the woman and her son who had disappeared and was presumed dead. And, you know, we don't sit down and document how much time it takes us to deal with cases where there may never be an arrest, but that is a real amount of additional work for us that they don't deal with.
Thank you, Representative. Question from the chair, Mr. Spehaus, and I've always, in my short time here in the legislature, I've appreciated the DAs. You seem to have look out for your troops, and I appreciate that as far as looking out for their raises and that sort of thing. I know it's been, what, I believe 15, 16 years since the judges have received a base pay raise. Can you recall the last time or when the DAs last got a raise?
Yes, sir. In 2008, there was a salary increase of $6,179,000, which is equivalent of 5.42%, which brought the DA salary to the current 114,354 with the increases that have been there. So 2008 was the last statutory change.
Any other questions for this witness? Representative Hightower.
Mr. Bayles, I appreciate you coming up and presenting to us today. And mine was really on follow-up on Chairman Weldon. That's why I was asking Chairman Powell these questions earlier. We give a lot of focus towards our judges because our judges know that they're just held in high regard, as are our DAs and our public defenders. But giving credit where it needs to go, in order for our system to work, you are very correct. We need qualified DAs. But we also need qualified public defenders for the system to be level. Right? And that's the way our justice system works, to be a pretty close to equal playing field. And I guess that's my concern, because when we're talking about these salaries, we're talking about the type of people we attract, right? The type of people we attract in these jobs, the type of people that we keep in these jobs. And in all honesty, even though I understand the elected DA may do a little bit more than some of the public defenders, I don't think that I want to attract a less qualified public defender. Does that make sense? In the art of fairness and in the art of keeping our justice system where it seems as those things are equal, as they should be, if we're talking about salaries, and a lot of the talk has been about attracting good judges and keeping good judges and keeping them in the field, I think the same type of argument correlates back to the public defenders and the DAs. We want to keep those qualified guys and ladies in that position. We want to keep them there. And I'm not in support of in any way taking away from the DAs. That's not it at all. But I am curious to look at a little bit deeper as to why there's such a large disparity, even though they do a little bit more, and maybe a considerable amount more. I don't know. That's what I need to look into. I do want the same quality of person on both sides, if that makes sense.
And we support that concept as well.
And that's what I was going to say with my question.
Sure.
Thank you, Representative Hightower. Any other questions for this witness? Chairman Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I follow up on what we just talked about, please? District attorneys do we have throughout the state?
There's 49 judicial circuits and 49 elected district attorneys.
How many assistant district attorneys do we have?
I knew you would do that to me. There's a little over 400, I believe, total, but that's not the state paid as that's county paid as state paid. I don't. That's how much? I think it's about 310 total of state paid, right? 310 state funded. 310 state funded and another 100 or so county funded. The only document I didn't bring up.
Thank you, Mr. Spahas. Mr. Porter, do you wish to address the committee?
Well, I only wanted to go back to Representative Hightower's question, and really it goes back to the issue of discrepancies and parities, and we're not arguing with yes, we need good public defenders, yes, we need good prosecutors, yes, we need good judges, and we're here to argue for the district attorneys, not to the detriment of anyone else, and that's really the position. Historically, that's where the percentage was set, as Chairman Willard said. But we're here to talk about parity as a principle, not directly tied to money, and that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Mr. Miller, do you wish to address the committee? No. Thank you very much. I will give the option to the Public Defender Standards Council. Come up and have your turn in the dock, if you will. And thank you very much for being here.
As you may have noticed, I'm not Travis Sackerson. We've been confused with one another, but hopefully not today. I'm Jiminique Rogers, and this is my second week on the job as Acting Executive Director of GPDSC. And with me today, I have our Budget Manager, Terry Rayford, and our Liaison, Cheryl Coronas. And I'd like to just say, although they're not physically present here with me, we have 49 dedicated circuit public defenders in this state who are here with me in spirit. And in spirit, we support this bill. I'd like to say thank you to Chairman Powell for considering us to end with this bill, and also to you, Chairman Atwood, for allowing us to speak today. As many of you may be aware, our circuit public defenders, as was discussed earlier, had a set salary since the inception of this agency, 10 years ago, in fact. And there has been no statutory salary increase since then. Now, there has been a cost of living increase, but that was in 2008. And that brings us to our current salary. The public defenders across the state, the circuit public defenders, have worked tirelessly. And so we appreciate and support this bill for the recognition it gives of their hard work. And we're open to any questions you may have of us.
Thank you very much. Representative Coomer?
Same question again. Can you tell me about whether the public defender's offices receive local supplements across the state? Does everyone receive it? And is it similar to the DAs and the superior courts where there is variance from county to county, circuit to circuit?
Although there's the ability for the county to support the circuit public defender offices, and they do in different ways, there is no supplement to the circuit public defender's salary in any of our counties.
Thank you.
Any other questions for this witness? Yes, sir. There we go. Chairman Willard.
Thank you, Chair. I was trying to hear what you said. I may have misunderstood. Back in 2008, we heard the district attorneys received a pay increase. Was there any pay increase at that time to the public defenders?
There was a cost of living increase. It did not increase the statutory salary. So while the salary has remained the same, there was a 7% COLA increase. That was in the third year of the existence of the agency.
All right. Was that in 2008 or a different time?
2008. And we have not had an increase since then.
That's the only increase you've had, your office has had for public defenders since its inception?
For our circuit public defenders, yes, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Willard. Chairman Weldon.
The circuit public defenders.
Now, how many public defenders, circuit public defenders do you have?
There are 49.
And how many assistant public defenders are attorneys?
We have 200 state-funded assistant public defenders. We have 10 additional slots that are not filled at this time for a total of 210, and there are 242 county-funded positions.
I'm sorry, how many counties?
242. Correct. Correct.
Thank you, Chairman Weldon. Any other questions for this witness? Any other witnesses you might have? Okay.
No, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair would, and thank you for what you do. The chair would also like now to open the floor. We don't have a list of those that might wish to testify, but if you do, this is your opportunity. Anyone from the district attorneys that are in our audience, or from any of the judges, anyone else, please come up and identify yourself for the audience, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Thomas Worthy. I'm Director of Governmental Affairs for the State Bar of Georgia. On behalf of the 47,000 members of the State Bar, we thank you for your efforts and your diligent work on this, and we are wholly in support of the bill, especially now that it includes the public defenders. An adequately funded judiciary is the most important thing to ensure justice to all Georgians. That is why the Board of Governors voted to adopt judicial, district attorney, and public defender salary increases, and we ask you for favorable consideration of this bill.
Thank you very much. Any questions for this witness? Thank you for what you do. Any other witnesses like to come forward? And now will Chairman Powell, if you'd like to address the committee again, if you wish, author the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I think it's apparent from the witnesses who have testified that that this committee has a lot of respect for the judiciary and for those who are involved in the justice system, and that that those folks who have testified have a lot of respect for this committee and the decisions that it has to make and the job it has to do to look after not only the judiciary, but also the state budget and other state employees. And having said that, I think that there is a consensus among everybody that we need to make some adjustments in the pays that we give to our judicial and our public defenders and our district attorneys. I think the issue that I have heard raised most often is the disparity in the supplements that are being paid in both the Superior Court judges, the district attorneys, and if there were some in the public defenders, but apparently there are none. Certainly that is something that needs to be addressed at some point in time, because as we proceed along this, as has happened over the years, that disparity becomes greater, and it certainly needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. But having said that, I don't think that we want to delay for another year having to address that problem while we study that disparity. It's been 15 years since the judges of this state have had a pay raise, and it's been 7 years since the DAs and the public defenders have had a pay raise, which was basically a cost of living adjustment. It was not a pay raise, because the pay raise in 2008 was vetoed by the governor. I also think that there is some concern about the fact that when we do something, it has a ripple effect, because there are other salaries that are tied to it, and I think certainly that this committee or someone needs to look into that, because it's unfortunate if we say that I'm going to spend $1 and it winds up costing me 15 because of the unintended consequences of the things that are tied to it. But I still appreciate what the seriousness with which this matter is being addressed by this committee. I would encourage this committee to adopt this bill and to pass it forward to full committee. But I also understand if the committee wants to hold it for a little while they sort of mull over some of these issues. But I do not think that we need to delay beyond this term of the legislature, and I do not think we need to postpone it for another year, but I do understand that we want to make good decisions, and I would understand if you would want to hold it for a while we deliberate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Willard.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask permission to be excused to go to the caucus meeting election of the board members of the Department of Transportation in my district. I want to leave expressing my support for the bill. I was 2008 bill that I helped sponsor. I've had a conversation with a long-time member of the State Judicial Nomination Committee, and one of the things we're still getting the quality of judges and candidates. And I'll express what was told to me, at least by this person, the time he's been on the panel. They have seen a declining of what they felt to be the quality of people coming forth seeking to be appointed as a judge. And in cases, they've had some circuits who had to go out and actually help do some recruiting to encourage people to step forward for this very important public service to our state. And so it is a need that we've got to recognize. Yes, there's disparity of salaries. These lower circuits are not getting certain funding they need, and if we can find some solution, maybe Solomon can step in and help us solve that one, but it's an important issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're excused. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I think I have Chairman Powell, I believe. I'm hoping it is. It says it's on, so.
I would like to ask a question, and I noticed that we are still legal counsel. I want to address in particular the feelings that I think I'm hearing from some of the committee members. I think everybody's in support in general terms of what Chairman Powell said. I think that there's some concerns that a lot of the members of the committee have. The parity issue between the Superior Court judges and the supplement structure. The second one, I noticed that several of us, several members, I'd like to ask a question, and perhaps about the possibility of something. If we took this bill and we segregated the section to deal with the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals, get a second section, separate bill to address perhaps something in the term of a state something. If it was wishing to consider a state supplement to these.
I think I understand your question to be, what's the domino effect if, for locals that are tied to Superior Court judges' salaries or perhaps DA salaries? And the only solution to that is local law. Local law is what controls that. So if, for example, the Superior Court judge's salary increases to what it is in the bill today, you would have to look at your local law, see what your percentage is there, and then introduce a piece of legislation to adjust accordingly, depending on what you wanted to do. As Chairman Powell said, for example, his state court judge salary is tied to the Superior Court judge salary, and he felt like, as a percentage-wise, and there hadn't been an increase, and he felt like if this were to go through, that he would be okay, and he didn't feel like in his particular situation he needed to make any changes. But I would say that every member would have to consider that for their own area and determine what's best to be made, but it would what decision to make, but it would have to be done by a piece of local legislation. Chairman Powell may have support it.
Let me add, Jill, I think part of this question is that if you did a statewide supplement rather than a salary increase, would then that not kick out the tying in provision?
Yes. Sorry, that was a lecture that you didn't need.
Also give a committee so that it would then, if we did it under the term of statewide supplement.
Yes.
And would it also not give us, also give the committee
Right.
prepared?
Yes, so we changed it to a statewide supplement versus a across-the-board increase. You are correct. You could attend to that situation a lot better.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to hold this bill to be worked on. If you would appoint a subcommittee to work the bill, possibly something in
Mr. Chairman, I think it's a great idea if you ask him to chair.
I think he would be a very good candidate for it. We do have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay. Any discussion? Well, the chair has a little discussion. Before we move, I appreciate the comments and the questions of each member of this committee. They work very hard. And I would hope that the judges and the DAs and everyone involved, the public defenders and all, the committee is responsible for about a little over 9% of the entire budget of the state of Georgia. And we look at everyone from prison guards to GBI agents to board-certified pathologists that we can't keep. And we look at the facilities of over $1 billion budget in the Department of Corrections. And we try to make decisions. And we try to make decisions that are fair and that are equitable, just like a judge, without partiality or prejudice, and trying to be fair. Now, I made some notes as we were going along here, and before we vote on that motion, but this is the sense of the chair listening to the comments and the testimony and the questions, the disparity between the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals and those Superior Court judges that are making very high supplements, and in some cases much more than our Court of Appeals and our appellate courts. I like to see, I have kind of a preference for governors becoming presidents. Well, I like to see my Court of Appeals and my Supreme Court being filled by the ranks of those that served in Superior Court and the other courts. I think it gives them great experience, and I think they need to be there. You get some great judges that didn't serve there, granted. But I don't want to see a Superior Court judge have to take a pay cut in order to be a Court of Appeals or Supreme Court justice. That doesn't make sense to me. I also noticed the disparity between our Superior Court judges who had very high supplements and those with very low supplements. I look down at the Lap-Hall circuit. I see they don't get one. And you're seeing around 122 and some 120 and some change all the way up to 186. I need to wrap my arms around that, my brain around that, and right now I hadn't done it. Same thing with our district attorneys. There's not hardly a group I admire more than our DAs, but I see the same issue there. Those with no supplements, those with very high supplements. And the disparity between the DAs and the public defenders obviously were testified to some concern. The issues of local legislation. How do we deal with that? What impact does that have on our local communities? What impact does that have on our tax base for our local communities? We have to be thoughtful. I stay in almost daily contact with my county commissioners, and believe me, they advise me, as well as our appellate court judges on workers' compensation, for example. How does that factor in? I would like to see legislation move this year. That is something I am concerned about, but my sense is, and I would concur with the gentleman that made the motion, that I think we need to perfect this a little bit more. And at this point, the chair will entertain a vote on the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. I will appoint a committee to work with Chairman Powell, and let's see if we can work on it and move quickly if we can. Thank you. Chair, we'll be thinking about that. We are adjourned. Thank you all.